Oh my god, I am so excited. So I recently was watching somebody watch There Will Be Blood for the first time, and I remember when I saw it for the first time, and notwithstanding that I'm an incredible once-in-a-millennia genius, I still struggled to understand a lot of the aspects of this movie and the storytelling and the thematics behind it. So they did an admirable job just having seen it for the first time, but it made me realize that a lot of things are misunderstood about the way this movie is structured and what it means. So I thought that I would try to clear some stuff up, and hopefully people in the comments will nudge me in the right direction where I get it wrong or add some new ideas, and we can all better appreciate this wonderful masterpiece by PTA. So There Will Be Blood is a 2007 movie directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, written by Paul Thomas Anderson, based on the book Oil by Upton Sinclair. I have read the book. There are a lot of changes. It's starring, of course, DDL Daniel Day-Lewis, the man himself, who is the male Cate Blanchett. He absolutely disappears in the roles that he does, and it's incredible to watch. It's also got Paul Dano, who is a very good actor in his own right, but I don't think he quite reaches the level of a DDL. But he is definitely dedicated to the two characters that he has to play in this particular movie. So the description of this one, a story of family, religion, hatred, oil, and madness, focusing on a turn-of-the-century prospector in the early days of the business. This movie lost to No Country for Old Men, right, for Best Picture, which annoys me, but I do still actually love No Country for Old Men. And obviously that's based on the Cormac McCarthy book, and it's relatively close to the book, actually. But I would give it to There Will Be Blood. I understand Javier Bardem versus DDL. Javier Bardem gets more of a sexy role where he gets to be the embodiment of fate and death, and he just is so awesome in that. So I understand it, but still, I definitely lean There Will Be Blood overall. So people should know what the movie is about. I'm not going to go through the details because I mostly want to talk about the thematics, but the movie is Daniel Plainview, given a very particular drawl, seductive drawl by Daniel Day-Lewis. And he is a prospector who initially is looking for stones, precious stones, but then switches up to oil. And this is early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century. So this is really before the big booms and where everybody was trying to find where the oil was so they can make dynasties, really. And the depictions of the world and the period at this time are just immaculate. It looks barren. There are just homesteads here and there, these tiny towns and trains everywhere. You see a lot of oil derricks and oil derricks exploding. The way that people act, the clothes, the demeanors, the emotional reactions, all those things just make a whole lot of sense for the time period. It looks great, looks fantastic. You've got Paul Dano on the other side, who is playing first the brother, Paul, who is somewhat of a defector and gives Daniel Day-Lewis Daniel Plainview a tip on where to find oil back in his home state, which the locals don't know about, but if Daniel can get there and get the contract rights to this land, then he can have tons and tons of oil, make a killing on it, and barely have to pay them anything. So Paul Dano also plays Eli, and of course both of those are very biblical names, the brother Paul and brother Eli. And Eli is a pastor at their small town, and he is suspicious of Daniel's intentions coming here, and whether he's actually going to be helpful, and whether he believes in God, and what good things he's actually going to do for the community. So at a certain point, Daniel Plainview, one of his employees, dies in an accident, and the employee had a son, a very young son. So Daniel Plainview takes on the son as his own, HW, and will later use him as part of his pitch to local communities to be able to build oil derricks. And the kid just disarms a lot of the people who would otherwise have been very suspicious. So there are a number of things going on with this movie. It was widely heralded at the time. I saw it in theaters. A lot of people don't really understand it. I remember there was a friend of mine at the time who saw it, and he was like, oh, it's all right. And then when I said, but there was this awesome metaphorical conflict between capitalism and religion, he's like, oh, well, that was awesome. It was just funny that he had not considered that at all. But anyway, so that's just the least of it, is that bit of conflict between Daniel and Eli. So, of course, the music is absolutely intense and engaging. The plotting's great. It's like 2.5 hours. There's a lot going on. At one point, a guy shows up who is his long-lost brother, and so he gets to work with his long-lost brother. And we have one of those amazing, forever memorable scenes where Daniel Day-Lewis says, I have a competition in me. And he has a lot of great lines in that one. And then at the end, of course, he has one of the most amazing lines. But anyway, so the big question is, people should know how the plot goes. The big question is, what does it all mean? Now, in the first instance, you have to look at the title, There Will Be Blood. The original book is called Oil by Upton Sinclair. PTA calls this There Will Be Blood. This is not just a reference to the violence that happens throughout. There's a lot of violence and murder, and so that would make sense to be a reference to that. But it's also a reference to blood as in blood sacrifice. So there are obviously a lot of biblical themes as you go through the whole movie, and the sacrifice of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, is one of those biblical themes. So first, you do have to look at it in terms of capitalism and religion. Daniel Plainview, and this is really early in the functioning of capitalism in the United States, so people are still trying to figure out where the lines are, what you can and can't do. So Daniel Plainview is representing capitalism. He's just pushing, trying to get as much as he can. He works very hard. He'll sleep on the hard floor of a cabin so he can be close to the oil derrick, so he makes sure that it's running properly. He'll be waked up in the middle of the night to hear about an accident and try to manage the locals when an accident occurs. But this is a whole new idea. This is the new kid in town, the new philosophy of capitalism, where you're just trying to make as much money as possible. And then religion is the old kid. It's the kid who's been there for a while. And the way that he's managed throughout all this time is he has convinced people of particular precepts and ideas, and that has kept them in check. And this is represented by Eli and the town. So primarily Eli, though. So one of the things that happens very early on is that HW is involved in an accident. There's an explosion, and he was really close to one of the oil derricks when it explodes, and he loses his hearing. He can't hear anymore. So one of the early scenes with Eli is that he is tossing this demon out from this woman who has arthritis. There's something weirdly demonic about the way that he does it. So he's going through it, and he's approaching the door, and he's yelling, and he's got this very distorted voice, and it's this unnatural scream. So it doesn't seem like the kind of positive version of an exorcism that you would see. There's something off about it. So later, though, Daniel asks him, "Why didn't you cure the affliction of my son?" So what's happening is capitalism is now questioning the validity of religion. Now, there are two ways to read that. It could be capitalism questioning the validity of religion because it wants the power that religion has. That's what it's trying to go for. And that is a precursor to the 20th and 21st century that we've been living, which wouldn't be unreasonable. But there's another way to read it that I think is more accurate. It's more to the point. Is that capitalism in Daniel Plainview is questioning the sincerity of the things that have been there all this time. So he's questioning, okay, religion, you are acting as though you are sincere, and this is what you believe, and that's why you're trying to get money from me, that's why you're trying to do the things that you do, and you want to bless the well and all this other stuff. Eli, it's because you have this sincere belief, or is it because you are a grifter, and you're just a capitalist like me, but you're doing it in a different realm, and you're using different methods to do that? Now, again, you could have it that Daniel Plainview wants it to be one way or the other way. He can want it to be the case that Eli is full of it, and he's just a grifter, and he's using people in the way that capitalists try to use people. Or maybe Daniel wants it that, no, in actuality, Eli believes what he says. He is 100% committed to the religion and has nothing to do with the money or trying to take advantage of people. So through the whole movie, you've got Daniel questioning the validity and sincerity of Eli, and Eli getting into all sorts of problems with Daniel, including fist fights and the like. And this all culminates by the end of the movie. Now, at the same time, you've got Daniel who has family, but what is all of his family? All of his family is false. He has his son, who he says is his son, and he uses for part of this capitalistic endeavor, but it's not actually his son. It's somebody that he took from one of his employees who passed away. And this is something that he doesn't tell his son until very late in the movie, almost the end of the movie. And then he has a brother. There's a brother who shows up who says that, I got this letter from our sister or something like that, and so I came to find you, and I just wanted to see my brother. I just wanted to meet my brother, and I can work with you. And Daniel Plainview is happy to do this at this point. He says, it's great. I have nobody to talk to. There's nobody that I'm really close to. And so I'll have a brother now, and we can do this together. So this is another aspect of sincerity. It's family. It's something that you can count on beyond the ideas of capitalism, the ideas of capitalistic success. So there's something else that he can count on. Now, as they go through, then obviously they're on the beach and they're talking, and Daniel Plainview makes just a joke about going to the peach tree dance. That's something that happened back home. And the brother character just kind of shrugs it off because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what the peach tree dance is, even though it was something that was ubiquitous in their hometown. So Daniel knows that that's not really his brother. And so this is another aspect of something that should have been sincere that turns out to be full of it. It's not something that's real, just like with religion. So what does he do? He, shoots him and goes on from there. But this is punctuated by the fact that at the end of the movie, what does he do? He's talking to his son. His son's saying that, you know what, I want to go off into this place by myself, and I want to have my own wells and build my own business. Now, again, there are multiple ways to see how this is functioning in that Daniel, when he rejects that, he says he's not happy about that he's going to do that. And this is where he finally tells him that you're not my real son, you're bastard in a basket. Of course, that's extremely biblical. Bastard in a basket. So he says there are different ways that he could take it in that I don't want you to go into the soulless capitalism that I have been doing for my entire life. It has made me miserable. I wanted real connection, and really this is all I got from it, is these big houses, big empty dead houses. Or it's the final realization that there's just nothing sincere. This isn't my real kid. It's never been my real kid. We've never had a real connection. And this is something I'm only realizing finally, this is the last straw, that I know that there's nothing sincere out there. It doesn't matter if I'm successful capitalistically. There's nothing sincere out there in the human race. There's a point when he's talking to his brother and he talks about how I hate most people. And he goes on and on about how terrible people are, and he's never felt connected to them. But the very important thing that happens right after this, after his son leaves, is that he is absolutely distraught. It's the most emotionally damaged he's been in the entire movie, is once his kid says, I'm leaving. You're a miserable human being. I'm not staying with you, and I'm just going by myself. And he said, okay, this is the final straw. I know there's no sincerity out there, so now I'm completely devastated. And then you have Eli, who shows back up and finally confirms everything that Daniel thought about what religion was and what people are by saying that he was a sinner and he did terrible things. Eli's saying this, that I'm a sinner. I did terrible things. I need money. He was trying to sell him the Bandy tract, but that's where he talks about seepage. And he goes, I drink your milkshake. Beautiful. So now Eli's trying to sell something for his own benefit. He doesn't believe any of this stuff because Daniel says, okay, you know what? I will buy the Bandy track and give you your royalties for it if you denounce everything related to religion and say that it was all nonsense. And so Eli says, okay, well, I'll do that because I really want this money. And then so Daniel knows, yeah, you're full of it. And you always were. It was always BS. And so they get into a scuffle. Daniel takes a pin, a bowling pin, and takes Eli out. So that was like capitalism putting the stake in religion, saying that, no, you're as much of a grifter as me, except at least I'm offering something in exchange for my grift, as opposed to you that doesn't offer anything but empty words. So there are a whole bunch of things that are actually really important to understand about this. Again, it was questioning the sincerity of the old system. In this case, religion and family. It's questioning the sincerity of those things. You have somebody who was a false prophet and a false healer. And Daniel knew from the beginning, but he had to play the game initially until they got to the end when he finally got to show Eli for the grifter that he was. Now on Yom Kippur, there's a practice of the two goats. So you have the one goat that is the sacrifice that you are killing as an offering to God. And then you have another goat who you pile all your sins onto and send out into the wilderness. And so in this case, you've got Paul and Eli, who are twin brothers. One of them is given what? Is given money for the information related to the oil and sent off into the wilderness. And then you have the other brother, Eli, who ends up being the sacrificial goat. Now, there's even a point when Eli is at dinner. And by the way, there's an amazing shot in this dinner scene where Eli's just sitting there and he's got his mud-covered face from when he got into a fight with Daniel. And then he just bursts up from the table. I'm not sure how many takes it took or anything like that, but it looks so good because there's this moment of just quiet and it's just like he's being a coiled snake and then finally bursts up onto the table to go attack his father. It's beautiful. Anyway, and there's a big idea behind that whole attacking his father thing as well. But at this dinner, Eli tries to blame Paul. He says it's all Paul's fault, which is, of course, scapegoating. And that's where the term comes from, scapegoating, when you try to blame the other goat for everything that's going wrong. But Paul had been given the sin and sent off into the wilderness. The sin is the money. So by the time we get to the end, obviously Eli shows up. He becomes the sacrificial goat. That's the one that is killed as an offering to God. But for Daniel, at this point, it's now a Pyrrhic victory. It's not a real victory over this because he sincerely wanted something real to be out there. He wanted a God to be offering to. He wanted real connection with other people. He wanted religion to mean something, but he didn't get that. Fundamentally, the capitalist wants a sincere foundation. That's the reason that they are capitalists, that they're trying to accomplish something, is because they want something sincere out there that they get to enjoy and luxuriate as a result of all their efforts. So you have this false prophets and this false family that he's had to deal with now. He tested all of the sources of sincerity and they've all failed. And what does he say? Does anybody remember? I know you can just look it up now because we're not live, but does anybody remember what he says at the end? What is the last thing that Daniel Plainview says? Now, I will help by saying, do you remember, anybody go to Bible school or read the Bible? Do you remember what were the last words of Jesus Christ on the cross? What did he say? He said, "It is finished." What does that mean? That is the whole plan, the prophecy, the ideas that God the Father had, the sacrifice of the Lamb of God for the sins of the people. It has finally wrapped up. It is finished. That is the final word of Jesus Christ while he's on the cross. And so what does Daniel Plainview say? After he has sacrificed the goat to the God that's not there, what is the thing that he says? He says, "I'm finished." It is finished, as in the whole prophetic plan that was put into place by God turns into "I'm finished." So now he's the only one. He's the capitalist. He's the cold person that realizes there is nothing else that is the plan. I'm the one who chose what is happening right now, and this is what I chose, and it's miserable. He sacrificed the sinful lamb, and he gets nothing for it but an empty, cold house that can never be a home. So it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's not just incredibly well made, but it has the kinds of structured thematics that you can watch a movie over and over and over again and get more and more wisdom out of it. Now, it goes without saying that Daniel Day-Lewis does such an incredible job with this character. I cannot believe how good this guy is at acting. And Paul Thomas Anderson hasn't been as heralded in more recent times. He makes his small movies for a virtually identical budget for every movie and just hopes that they make enough back that he can keep making movies. But this is one for the record books. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. And I will forever appreciate it when filmmakers actually make an effort to say something deeper and more profound with the medium. So anyway, that was There Will Be Blood. Let me know what you think about it. Are there any things that I missed? Is there more complexity or more references that add to or detract from my theory of the movie? Please subscribe if you would, and I will see you on the next one. That's it.